Emily Carter was not like other teenagers at her high school. She was brave in a way most people didn't see. 2 years ago, when she was only 15, she had been in a terrible car accident. The accident had changed her life forever. Her car was hit by a truck on a rainy night. Emily was badly hurt. She was rushed to the hospital and spent weeks there. Doctors did everything they could to save her life. Emily survived, but she had many scars on her arms and face from the accident and the surgeries that followed. Every scar told a story of pain, struggle, and survival. But for the other students at school, those scars were not a symbol of courage. To them, the scars made Emily different, and some of them did not know how to act around her. Instead of being kind, many students whispered behind her back, stared at her, or even laughed. They didn't try to understand what she had been through. To them, she was just the girl with scars. Emily tried her best to live a normal life. She wanted to be like other teenagers, to go to school, make friends, and feel happy. But every day was a challenge. Walking through crowded hallways felt like walking through a battlefield. She could hear the whispers whenever she passed by. Some students would point at her scars and giggle. Some even made rude comments. The worst moments were in the cafeteria, where students would openly laugh and tease her. One day during lunch, Emily sat at her usual table near the window. She kept her head down, hoping to finish her meal quickly. But a group of popular students at a nearby table noticed her. They started to laugh loudly. "Hey, look at that zombie," one of them joked. "Did you lose a fight with a bear or something?" another added, laughing with the others. The group laughed so hard that some other students joined in. Emily's heart sank. She felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to disappear, to run away from all the laughter. But she stayed still. She didn't cry in front of them. Instead, she looked down at her tray and tried to eat her food. Inside, she was hurting deeply, but she didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing her upset. Emily's scars were not just marks on her skin. They were reminders of a fight for life, a fight she had won. But the students who laughed at her didn't see that. They only saw the scars. They didn't know about the nights Emily spent in the hospital, the pain she endured, or the courage it took to come back to school every day. Her family was proud of her. They called her their little warrior. Her mother often told her, "Emily, your scars are beautiful because they show how strong you are." But at school, their words felt far away. The words of the bullies were louder in Emily's mind. Sometimes Emily wondered why people were so mean. Was it because they were afraid of something different? Or because they didn't understand pain? She wished she could tell them her story, but she was too shy. She didn't want to be a victim or a burden. She wanted to be Emily. Just Emily. Despite the pain and the teasing, Emily was not alone. A few close friends saw past her scars. They didn't care what she looked like. They loved her for who she was inside. They would sit with her at lunch, talk to her between classes, and protect her when the teasing got worse. Those small acts of kindness gave Emily hope, but the cruelty still hurt. Every day was a struggle between sadness and strength. Emily learned to hide her feelings and put on a brave face. She became quiet and reserved. Sometimes she would catch herself wishing for a miracle, a way for people to see her not as a scarred girl, but as a strong person who had survived something terrible. One afternoon, Emily's art teacher noticed that she was not her usual self. Emily had always loved painting and drawing. It was one of the few things that made her happy. But recently, she stopped coming to art class and avoided talking to anyone. The teacher, Mrs. Williams, gently asked Emily if everything was okay. Emily hesitated but then quietly said, "People don't understand me. They only see my scars. They don't see me." Mrs. Williams smiled kindly. "Emily, your scars are part of your story. They are not what defines you. You are so much more than that. Your courage, your kindness, your talent, Those are the real you. She gave Emily a small notebook and said, "Use this to tell your story. You don't have to say it out loud if you don't want to. Just write what you feel." Emily took the notebook home and started to write. She wrote about the accident, the pain, the hospital stays, and the long road to recovery. She wrote about the people who laughed and those who were kind. She wrote about her dreams and fears. Writing helped her feel lighter. It was like she was sharing her story with a friend who listened without judgment. Though the scars on her skin were permanent, Emily's spirit was healing little by little. She realized that she was not alone, even if the school felt lonely at times. She had people who cared for her, and one day, maybe the others would understand too. Until then, Emily decided she would keep walking through the halls with her head held high. She would keep fighting to be seen for who she really was. And maybe, just maybe, those who laughed at her scars would one day see the strength behind them. After the cruel laughter echoed through the cafeteria, Emily felt more alone than ever. The pain in her heart was sharper than the physical scars on her arms and face. Yet, what she didn't know was that not everyone at the school was unaware of her suffering. There were eyes watching quietly, noticing what others chose to ignore. Among those who noticed was Mr. Ramirez, the school custodian. Mr. Ramirez was a man of few words, but great heart. He worked quietly, sweeping floors, fixing broken chairs, and making sure the school stayed clean. Students rarely paid attention to him, but he paid attention to everything that happened around him. He noticed the way some students whispered, behind Emily's back, how they laughed cruelly, and how Emily's smile slowly disappeared day by day. Mr. Ramirez wasn't an ordinary man. Before becoming a custodian, he was a Marine, a soldier who had served his country with courage and honor. He had seen many things in his life: battles, bravery, and cruelty. He understood what it meant to fight for survival. His own scars, both visible and invisible, reminded him of his strength. So when he saw Emily being hurt by the students, harsh words and laughter, he felt something stir inside him, a strong desire to protect her, even if he couldn't do it openly at school. That afternoon, after finishing his work in the cafeteria, Mr. Ramirez sat down in the break room with a heavy heart. He thought about Emily and her pain. He remembered the stories he had heard from his old friends in the Marine Corps about resilience and kindness. He also thought about Emily's uncle, who was a Marine too, and had once shared Emily's story with him during a reunion. They had talked about how proud they were of her courage to keep going despite everything. Mr. Ramirez reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He stared at the screen for a moment before dialing a number. On the other end, his friend Jack answered. Jack was a retired Marine, a man who had also seen the harsh realities of life, but believed deeply in standing up for what was right. "Jack, it's Ramirez. I need your help," he said quietly. Jack's voice came through with calm understanding. "What's going on?" "There's a girl at the school, Emily Carter. You remember her uncle?" "She's the one with the scars from the accident," Ramirez explained. "She's being bullied badly. Some kids laughed at her scars in the cafeteria today. It broke my heart. We can't let her go through this alone." Jack paused, then said, "I know Emily. I've heard her story. She's strong, but nobody should have to face that kind of cruelty. What do you want to do?" Ramirez took a deep breath. "I'm thinking we should do something, not just for her, but for everyone who feels different and alone. Maybe if some of us show up, stand with her, it will send a message that scars are not shame. They are proof of survival." Jack agreed without hesitation. "Count me in. I'll call the others." Over the next few hours, Ramirez and Jack made more calls. One by one, other Marines who knew Emily's story joined in. Some had been her family friends, some had served with her uncle, and some had simply heard about her courage and wanted to help. Each man carried a deep respect for bravery, especially when it came in unexpected forms. like a young girl who faced pain every day with quiet strength. Meanwhile, Emily was unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. She went home that evening feeling exhausted and sad. Her mother noticed the tears in her eyes but said nothing, letting Emily find comfort in the quiet of her room. Emily opened her notebook, the one Mrs. Williams had given her, and began to write again. She wrote about the laughter, the pain, and the loneliness, but this time she also wrote about hope. A small voice inside her whispered that maybe things would change. Maybe someone would see her scars as a symbol of strength, not something to mock. Back at school, Mr. Ramirez prepared quietly for the next day. He told no one what was about to happen, not even Emily's friends. He wanted the surprise to be perfect, a moment that would speak louder than words, a moment that would remind everyone what true courage looked like. When morning came, the school day began like any other. Students chatted, teachers taught, and Emily prepared herself for another day of trying to stay invisible. She wished she could disappear, but she walked the halls with her head held high. Little did she know, she was not alone. As the lunch bell rang, students filled the cafeteria. The usual crowd gathered, with some still whispering about Emily and her scars. Then, suddenly, the doors swung open. A group of 6 men in crisp Marine uniforms walked inside. Their presence was commanding. Heads turned, whispers stopped, and the room grew quiet. The Marines walked with purpose toward Emily. They knew her name. They knew her story. They had come not just as strangers but as brothers and sisters in arms, standing for something greater than themselves. Emily looked up and froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had never seen anything like this before. The Marines gathered around her table. The leader, a tall man with kind eyes, gave a respectful salute and said, "Miss Carter, we heard about your bravery. We're here to tell you that your scars are medals of survival, and we are proud of you." The other Marines nodded and smiled warmly. One of them gently placed his hand on Emily's shoulder. The room was silent except for the soft sounds of encouragement. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt seen. Not as a girl with scars, but as a survivor, a warrior in her own right. The students who had laughed before watched in stunned silence. No one dared to say a word. The message was clear. Emily's strength was something to respect, not mock. That moment changed everything. Emily's confidence grew. She realized that kindness could come from unexpected places, and the Marine's simple act of standing with her became a powerful lesson for the entire school. That courage was real, and scars were a sign of it. From that day forward, Emily knew she was not alone. Behind the laughter and pain, there were people who cared deeply, and sometimes the quiet heroes, like Mr. Ramirez and the Marines, fought battles of kindness that changed lives forever. The next day at school was like no other. When Emily woke up that morning, she felt the weight of what had happened the day before in the cafeteria still heavy in her heart. The echoes of cruel laughter and mocking words lingered, but so did a tiny flicker of hope she hadn't felt before. She wondered if things would really change, or if it was just wishful thinking. Emily got ready slowly, looking at her reflection in the mirror. The scars on her arms and face were still there, but something inside her felt different, stronger. She put on her favorite sweater, one that covered some of her scars, but still allowed her to feel comfortable. She packed her bag, grabbed her notebook, and headed to school, trying to calm the nervous butterflies fluttering in her stomach. As she walked toward the school, the usual noise of students chatting and cars driving by felt distant. Her thoughts raced. Would the students still laugh? Would they ignore her? Or would today be a day she could finally feel normal? Emily's heart beat faster when she entered the school doors. She noticed the usual groups of students talking and laughing, but there was a strange stillness in the air. It was as if everyone sensed that something different was about to happen, even if they didn't know what. In the hallways, whispers started to spread. Did you hear? The Marines are coming to school today. Why would the Marines come here? Is this some kind of surprise? The students exchanged curious glances. Rumors traveled quickly, but no one was sure what was going on. Meanwhile, in the school office, Mr. Ramirez quietly watched the clock tick toward lunchtime. He had been preparing for this moment for days, making sure everything was in place without drawing attention. The Marines had arrived earlier that morning and were waiting just outside the school, ready to step inside at the perfect moment. Lunchtime arrived, and the cafeteria began to fill with students. Emily chose to sit at her usual table near the window, hoping for a quiet meal. Her heart pounded as she looked around, noticing the strange silence replacing the usual noisy chatter. Her friends sat nearby, offering encouraging smiles, but Emily still felt nervous. Suddenly, the cafeteria doors swung open. Heads turned instantly. In walked 6 Marines, dressed in their crisp blue uniforms, their medals shining under the cafeteria lights. Their presence was commanding, strong, proud, and full of purpose. The room went completely silent as students stared in disbelief. The Marines walked slowly toward Emily's table. Each step they took was steady and confident. The students who had mocked Emily just the day before stared at the scene, their mouths open but no words coming out. The usual chatter was replaced by a heavy silence filled with respect and awe. Emily felt a mixture of shock and disbelief. Her eyes widened, and her hands trembled slightly as the Marines approached. She wanted to say something but didn't know what. Her heart felt like it might burst with emotions. Surprise, hope, pride, and a deep sense of being understood. The leader of the group, a tall man with silver hair and gentle eyes, stopped in front of Emily and gave a crisp salute. "Miss Carter," he said clearly and respectfully, "we heard about your courage and strength. We're here to tell you that your scars are not something to hide or be ashamed of. They are medals of survival. You are a true warrior." The other Marines nodded and smiled warmly. One placed his hand softly on Emily's shoulder, a small but powerful gesture of support. Another handed her a folded American flag, a symbol of honor and bravery. The room remained silent, but the energy changed. It was as if a heavy cloud had lifted, and light was filling the space. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were tears of happiness and gratitude. She felt accepted, respected, and seen for who she really was. The laughter and teasing that had haunted her seemed far away now, replaced by a powerful feeling of belonging. The students who had been cruel just the day before sat frozen, their faces full of surprise and regret. They realized how wrong they had been to judge Emily by her scars and not by her heart. Some even looked away, ashamed of their actions. One Marine spoke up, addressing the entire cafeteria. "Everyone here has battles they face, some visible, some invisible. What matters is how we stand up for each other. Miss Carter's story is one of courage, and today we stand with her. Let this be a lesson for all of us to choose kindness and respect." The students listened quietly. Some nodded slowly, understanding the message. Others wiped away tears they hadn't realized had fallen. The atmosphere shifted from one of cruelty to one of empathy and unity. After a few moments, the Marines stood, together, smiling at Emily. She stood up, her posture proud and confident. For the first time, she didn't try to hide her scars. She let herself be seen, fully and bravely. As the Marines left the cafeteria, the students began to talk quietly among themselves. The teasing stopped completely. Instead, whispers of admiration and respect spread. Some students approached Emily to apologize, while others simply smiled warmly as they passed by. Emily felt a new strength inside her. She knew this moment was a turning point, not just for her, but for everyone at the school. The courage of the Marines had shown everyone that scars, whether physical or emotional, were marks of survival and bravery. That day, Emily realized something important. True strength wasn't about hiding pain or fitting in. It was about standing. Tall, being proud of who you are, and having others stand with you when you need it most. The story of the Marines' visit didn't end in the cafeteria. It became a legend at the school, a story told and retold about kindness, courage, and standing. Up against bullying, teachers used the event to teach lessons about empathy, respect, and the power of kindness. Emily's life began to change. She felt more confident walking the halls. New friendships blossomed, and old wounds started to heal. She still had scars, but now they were symbols of her strength and the kindness that had found her when she needed it most. The Marines continued to visit the school occasionally, becoming quiet heroes who inspired not just Emily, but the whole community. They reminded everyone that courage comes in many forms, and sometimes the greatest battles are fought with kindness. From that day forward, Emily's story was no longer one of pain and loneliness, but of hope, strength, and the power of standing together. And for Emily, the scars she once thought were a curse became a proud badge of survival, a reminder that she was never alone. The cafeteria remained quiet, still filled with the weight of the moment. Emily sat at her usual table, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it might be heard by everyone around her. The presence of the Marines was something she had never imagined in her wildest dreams. Just a day ago, the same room had been filled with cruel laughter and mocking voices directed at her scars. But today, the room was different, charged with respect, admiration, and a powerful sense of solidarity. The tall Marine who had approached her first stood with a calm confidence. His voice was steady and kind as he spoke. "Miss Carter, your scars are not signs of weakness. They are medals of survival, proof of your strength. We stand with you." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. She swallowed hard, trying to hold back her emotions, but the warmth in the room gave her courage. She looked up at the men standing before her, men who had faced dangers in wars, seen hardship beyond what most could imagine. And yet here, they were, honoring her story. She felt a deep connection to them, as if they understood a part of her that no one else had. One Marine stepped closer and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. The touch was soft but firm, a silent message that she was not alone, that she was part of something greater. Another Marine handed Emily a folded American flag, a symbol of honor, sacrifice, and bravery. The flag was heavy in her hands, not just in weight, but in meaning. The students around the cafeteria watched in stunned silence. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly aware of their own actions and words. The group that had laughed at Emily's scars the day before sat frozen, their faces pale with embarrassment and regret. For the first time, they saw the real person behind the scars. Not someone to mock, but someone to respect. The Marine leader continued, addressing the entire room. "Every one of us faces battles in life. Some you can see, like scars, and some you cannot. But what matters is how we treat each other through those battles. Today, we are here to show that kindness and respect are stronger than cruelty." His words echoed through the cafeteria like a call for change. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. Students who had been silent started nodding. Some whispered words of encouragement to Emily. Others looked around, realizing they wanted to be better, kinder. Emily's close friends gathered around her table, their faces full of pride and happiness. They had stood by her through the hardest times, and now they saw their courage rewarded. They smiled at Emily, who returned their smiles with newfound confidence. One of the Marines spoke softly to Emily. "You have a warrior's heart. Keep shining that light." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in her soul. The Marines then invited Emily to stand up with them. With a deep breath, she rose from her seat, showing her scars proudly for the first time without shame or fear. The room broke into a quiet applause, a sound that felt like a warm embrace around her. This moment was a turning point not just for Emily, but for the entire school. The students began to understand that bullying and cruelty only caused pain, while kindness and respect could heal wounds and bring people together. In the days and weeks that followed, Emily noticed changes everywhere. Students who once avoided her now greeted her with smiles. Teachers praised her courage openly, using her story as an example for others. Even the group that had mocked her apologized sincerely, some becoming friends. The school's atmosphere grew warmer and more accepting. Emily's story inspired a school-wide kindness initiative. Students organized events to celebrate differences and encourage support for anyone facing hardship. Emily herself became a quiet leader, sharing her journey through art, writing, and speeches. Her scars were no longer something to hide, but a symbol of hope and resilience. The Marines stayed in touch with Emily, visiting on special occasions and becoming part of her support system. They reminded her that courage came in many forms and that true strength was in standing tall, no matter what life threw your way. Through it all, Emily grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. She learned that healing was a journey, and while scars might remain, they were marks of victory, not defeat. Her story showed everyone that kindness could change lives, and that sometimes the greatest heroes were those who stood quietly beside you, ready to fight for what is right. Emily's life was forever changed by that day in the cafeteria. What had begun as a moment of cruelty turned into a powerful lesson of kindness, courage, and respect. Her scars told a story of survival, but the kindness of the Marines told a story of hope. Hope that no one has to face their battles alone, and, for Emily, that hope became her strongest shield, her greatest strength, and the light that guided her forward. Certainly. Here's a detailed, simple, and engaging explanation of Part 5 of the story in around 2,500 words, in third-person style. After the powerful moment in the cafeteria, Emily's life began to change in ways she had never expected. The kindness shown by the Marines was not just a one-time event, but a turning point that set her on a new path. She began to see herself differently, and so did the people around her. At school, Emily found herself surrounded by more friends than ever before. The students who once laughed at her scars now looked at her with admiration and respect. The change was not sudden, but it was steady, like the slow but sure blooming of a flower. People started to understand that those scars told a story of courage, strength, and survival. Emily's scars were no longer marks of shame but badges of honor. Teachers began to talk about kindness and empathy in classrooms more often, using Emily's story as an example of real bravery. They encouraged students to be more understanding of each other's struggles, whether visible or invisible. The school held special assemblies where Emily spoke about her journey, how hard it had been, but also how important it was to never give up hope. Her words touched many hearts and inspired others to be kinder and braver. Emily's parents were proud but also emotional. They had watched their daughter go through so much pain, and now they saw her shine with new confidence. They supported her every step of the way, knowing that healing was a journey, and scars, both physical and emotional, take time to fade. But they also knew that Emily was stronger than ever. Outside of school, the Marines kept their promise to stay in touch. They became mentors and friends, visiting Emily regularly. They shared stories of their own struggles and how they found strength to keep going. These visits gave Emily courage and guidance. She learned that being brave didn't mean never feeling scared, but facing fear with hope and determination. One Marine, Captain Johnson, became especially close to Emily. He had lost friends in battles and knew what it meant to carry pain inside. He often reminded Emily that scars are proof of battles fought and won, and that she was a true hero. His words stayed with Emily and helped her through the toughest days. Emily also found new ways to express herself. She started painting and writing poetry about her experiences. Through art, she could share feelings she found hard to put into words. Her paintings showed colors of hope and strength, and her poems spoke of healing and love. Soon, her work was displayed in school halls and local community centers, inspiring many others. But life was not without challenges. Sometimes old memories and fears would resurface. There were moments when Emily felt sad or overwhelmed, but now she had a support system: her family, friends, teachers, and the Marines, who helped her through those times. She learned that it was okay to ask for help, and that true strength includes knowing when you need support. Emily's story spread beyond her school. Local newspapers and community groups heard about the Marines' visit and how it changed everything. They wanted to share the message of kindness and courage with a wider audience. Emily was invited to speak at events and talk about how bullying affected her and how kindness saved her. She became a symbol of hope for many people who were struggling. One day, Emily was asked to speak at a large community event about bullying and kindness. She stood on the stage, her scars visible, her voice strong and steady. She told her story: the pain, the laughter, the Marines, and the journey toward healing. The audience listened quietly, many with tears in their eyes. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. People came forward to thank her for sharing and for inspiring them to be better. Through all this, Emily never forgot the Marines who had stood by her side when she needed it most. Their act of kindness had been a turning point, but their continued support was what helped her grow. She knew that sometimes all it takes to change a life is one act of kindness and one person believing in you. Emily's scars remained, but they were no longer something to hide. They were part of her story, a story of survival, courage, and the power of kindness. She learned that everyone has battles, but no one has to face them alone. Her life was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope can shine through, and that sometimes the strongest heroes are not the ones who fight with weapons, but those who fight with kindness, love, and courage. Emily's journey was far from over, but she walked forward with confidence and a heart full of hope. And wherever life took her, she carried the lessons she had learned: that scars tell stories, kindness changes lives, and courage lives inside every one of us.